Preston Bell Charles III. Right. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Levy, and this is True Theater. Welcome. Thank you. I'm one of the founders of True Theater, and we are proud to once again be coming to you live and in person from downtown Cincinnati's beautiful and historic Memorial Hall. Yeah. Special thanks to all the staff and the volunteers who help us make this evening run smoothly, and hopefully for it to be smooth for you too. Do you know tonight is the last show of our 12th season? Yeah. Yeah, and if you're a first-timer here tonight and you're kicking yourself because you're like, 12 seasons, how did I miss this? Our goal is to do another 12. So, yeah. And we'll have some exciting news to you about season 13 a little bit later and how you can get season subscriptions. And we got a couple people to thank before we get started. Some of you, you know who you are watching from home tonight. And that is thanks to our friends at Norse Media, the student-operated and run media center at Northern Kentucky University. They are sponsoring the rental of all the equipment it takes to do that tonight. Thank you all so much. Also, we are sponsored in large part tonight by Cincinnati History in Brick, a 501c3. Yeah. You may be able to guess they make such things as what you hopefully saw out there in the lobby, the giant Memorial Hall and even gianter music hall out of Lego brick. That's where the in brick comes from. We couldn't do shows like this without people like them. We also couldn't do it without people like you who buy tickets and who make donations sometimes. So just a real quick, if you're the kind of person that loves to make donations, and who isn't really, we are a 501c3 organization, and so your donations are probably tax deductible, but look, it's so easy to donate to True Theater. You just need to text the code TRUE12, TRUE12, no spaces, to the easiest number in the world to memorize, 44321, and you'll get a link back, and you take it from there, and it's so easy to donate from there. And if you're the type who likes websites, who isn't, at truetheater.org, there's a donate button at the bottom of that website. There's so many ways you could, hey, if you shake my hand later and slip me a 20, that'll work too. So it's all sorts of ways. We are a nonprofit. Excellent. So now you know how to donate to True Theater. I don't want to go on and yammer about that sort of thing right now. You're here because you want to hear some great stories. You know, we always say at True Theater that everybody has a story to share, and the only difference between strangers and friends is the sharing of that story. Tonight, you're going to make several new friends. The first of whom earned her first degree, a PhD in chemistry, from the Institute of Chemical Physics of the Academy of Sciences of Armenia. I read the whole name because it's so impressive sounding. She also has an MBA from another institute in Armenia that is much less impressive sounding, and an MA in Arts Administration from our very own College Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati, which she has put to use for the past 20 years in her profession as a fundraising professional. She is also an 11-year practitioner of the skill of mindfulness in the tradition of Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And when she's not doing that, she has some hobbies, one of which she's going to tell you about tonight. Please welcome Nune Sargsyan.
I love to dance. I love to tango. I love to dance Argentine Tango. I grew up in Soviet Union in a small country of Armenia. Armenia was one of the 15 republics of USSR. Everything was controlled. Everything was under the regulation. Not many freedoms. However, somehow Armenia had one more degree of freedom than others, and I don't know why, but we had a little bit more access to news to culture, and twice a week we had a TV show which showed different classical music excerpts or pop music, and I was glued. I was religiously glued twice a week to the screen and watching it. And that was the first time I saw a mariachi band. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice to see a mariachi band live? And remember, this is Soviet Union, Iron Curtain. And how was I gonna see a mariachi band? But it was my dream, and at that time, I felt that kind of maybe in the past life I was Latina. Maybe I was Latina dancer even. But that was kind of unconscious dream to hear mariachi band and maybe at some point in my life dance. So years went by and I found myself in San Diego, in University of San Diego in La Jolla with my friend. We landed on a student exchange. This is after the Iron Curtain fell. And we were on the student exchange and landed in San Diego for a 3-week orientation session before we moved to our respective universities for a year program. And we luckily found an Armenian guy named Mark who immediately wanted to show us everything in San Diego, the restaurants, the beaches, the zoo. And one day he told us, let's go to Mexico. Now we are on student visa in the United States, and I am a very law-abiding citizen, and I was like, we can't go to Mexico, we might not be able to come back. And my friend was very laid back and said, let's just try, what's gonna happen? When else are we gonna see Mexico? So we crossed the border with our friend Mark, and we came to Tijuana. And my friend and Mark, they retreated to the beach immediately. But I discovered an all-Mexican music festival happening right there in Tijuana. And I just was stuck in my seat and watching everything there. The beautiful Mexican dances, the beautiful women in colorful costumes, and the men in their sombreros and black costumes and stomping their feet on the ground in unison, and it was just a magic. And after we were done with that trip, I realized that my little simple subconscious dream came true, and that this is the land of opportunity. And I know, seeing a mariachi band, how big of a dream is that, right? So years went by, and I returned to Armenia. I lived and worked in Russia. And then I came back to United States to study at CCM, Arts Administration, and graduated, got my degree, got married, got divorced, got my citizenship, and my marriage was a bitter one, and it had some domestic violence incidents, and I realized that I needed some support and I needed to be proactive to transition to the solo life. So I started working with a therapist and just to help me with the transition. And as I was going through the transition, this was post-difficult marriage, I wasn't bitter and I wasn't angry, and I was in a great spot to learn new things. I was curious, I was open. I wanted to do new things, not in I'll show you or I'll show myself way, but it was just a great space to explore myself and explore the world. And slowly that feeling and that knowing that I was a Latina in my previous life, it started surfacing, and I was listening to Latin music, and I I couldn't sit. My blood was boiling, my blood was stirring, and I had to do something about it to learn the moves to be able to dance. So I found an instructor, a dance instructor. His name was Lenny. And I asked him, I want to dance Latin dances. I want to learn. And so he took me in, and I learned both Latin dancing, ballroom dancing. My world expanded. He taught me smooth dancing. And so I even performed in a couple of showcases. So one time we were preparing for a showcase, and I was doing Rumba. We were working on some choreography with him. And he was teaching me Rumba walks. And I don't know if you know what the Rumba walks are, but they look like this. And I'm wearing my very old worn dance shoes, practice shoes, to be able to show this. But I thought that this was the most vulgar thing I have done. And the studio has like tons of mirrors. And I was looking in the mirror, and I told my instructor, I was like, this is horrible. This is so bad. I'm not gonna do this. And he said, this is the way to do it first, and then you look great. And finally, I'm seeing some sensuality and some femininity in you. So that was a turning point. I was like, really? Really? You think so? So the dancing continued. I took dance lessons and classes. And then one day, a newly acquired friend, Heather, at dance studio, told me, let's go to Northside. There is this Argentine Tango studio. Let's go try. What do you have to lose? And of course, why not? Try another form of dance. So we went there, and the teacher was from Buenos Aires, and she was authentic, and she was teaching how to dance tango using your energy, of all things. And so I fell in love with music. It's gorgeous. I learned a lot about Argentine tango. Obviously, it originated in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, and it's a world in itself. It has its rules, its regulations, its terminology, and I started learning that. So if you are in Buenos Aires going to a milonga, which is the name for Argentine tango dance party, and for that matter, if you go anywhere in the world to a milonga, the rules are the same. Men are sitting on one side, women are sitting on the other side. If you are a couple, then you can sit together. And the way a woman is invited is the man on the other side winks at you or nods at you. And if you catch that, if you want to dance with him, you nod or you wink, you find a way to let him know that you're ready. And this thing is called cabeceo. Everything has a name in Argentine tango. So this cabeceo saves the man the embarrassment of coming up to you, asking you to dance, and being rejected. So when you wink yes, he comes to you and you start dancing. And when you start dancing, you don't do just one dance. You're supposed to dance a set of 3, and the set is called tanda. I told you, everything has a word, has a name there. And the reason is because tango is such an intuitive and improvisational dance that you need 3 dances to get to know your partner, to feel him, and to adopt, to adjust, and be in unison with the person. And I just started again learning tango, again, taking lessons and classes, learning the new skills, And it's an amazing thing to learn to dance because it works a different part of your brain and you physically feel it, kind of. And yeah, so it was wonderful. I found another thing about tango, or me being in tango, that I wasn't invited as often as I wanted. I probably was invited maybe 50% of the times that others were invited. And I don't like to compare myself to others, but if I'm going to a Malonga, to a dance party, right, I want to dance. That's the only reason I'm there. Why am I sitting and not dancing? So it was hard, and it was bruising my ego, and I even worked with a therapist on this. Why is this happening? We worked on it for about a year, and she gave up on that specific topic with me. Up until today, I don't know what's the reason. I have no idea. We went through so many theories, and I went to the dance, and I tried, and I came back. I said, nope, didn't work. However, even though I'm not invited so many times, well, exactly 50% of time, there are moments in Argentine Tango that are worth coming back and back and back. And I remember one of those moments. I was at a Malonga, and there was a lonely guy standing in the corner, and he was kind of a newcomer. Nobody knew him, and I'm very compassionate, so I went to him and I said, "Hi, what are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I'm from Austria. I'm just passing by, and I found this studio, and I came to dance." And I'm like, "You dance? Can you dance?" And he said, "Yeah, a little." And I asked him, "Well, would you like to dance? It's okay to invite a man to dance. You don't want to do it all the time, right? You're a woman, you want to be asked." But on that particular evening, I invited him to dance, thinking he's a newcomer, he's a beginner, and I consider myself solid intermediate dancer. So we went to the floor, to the dance floor, and we stood there for a moment, and the music started, and he slowly raised his hand, and I even slower raised my hand and put it in his hand, and you always try, you always adjust so that it's snug and reliable when you dance. And it was magic. And then he slowly went to the side, and I hesitated for 1/1,000,000th of a second and did the same. And then we went on dancing. And the guy was not a beginner. He was well advanced, and I will never forget the feeling that he gave me when we were dancing. In tango, there are moments dictated by music, pretty much. You listen to the music attentively, and he would stop, and it's a very brief moment when he stops, and you have a few seconds to decide what to do. You may want to pivot. You may want to brush your foot against his leg. You may just stand there and maybe change a weight. And he gave me so much respect and space for that, even though the time is really limited. I felt so good about that. And then once I did what I had to do, I can't remember, or I wanted to do, he did his next move. But that's the beauty of tango. He doesn't know what I'm going to do. Once I do it, he responds, and I don't know how he's going to respond, so I have to be present to respond to him. And that's why they say it takes two to tango. You have to be in constant conversation and connection. So this was one of those moments that are worth coming back to tango. And I don't even remember how the guy looked. I think he had gray hair. He never came back to studio. He was just passing by in Cincinnati. But I will never forget the way he made me feel, and he made me feel the dance. And so COVID, put a break on our lives. The studio was closed for 2 years. We all know how it was, right? And it recently opened, and I am hoping to go back to tango. And even though I may not be able to dance 50% of the time, moments like this with this Austrian guy are so well worth it.
One more time for Nune. Our second storyteller tonight was born in Western Kentucky in 1967, migrated across the border in 1972, and has been hereabouts ever since, studying aerospace engineering and computer systems engineering, and being a part of various startups and involved in Cincinnati technology along the way. He is also a founder of tonight's sponsor, Cincinnati History in Brick, and I feel compelled to tell you that he was already telling a story in the show before we had any conversation about him sponsoring, but he was enjoying the process so much he said we'd like to sponsor. So, Cincinnati History in Brick, which by now you're piecing together, pun intended, thank you, that he's responsible for those models out there in the front hallway. Yeah, really, I know. That was the first time I was seeing them in person tonight, too. He's got Memorial Hall and Music Hall out there. And by the way, Music Hall, he was in for the very first time when he was 6 years old, and I guess it had a really super impression on him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mark Clark.
You know, when I was putting pen to paper, coming up with this story this evening, it made me really think about what I actually do as a hobby. I mean, is it just Lego, or is it something else entirely? Now, what I physically do is 1/50th scale replicas of classic architecture in Lego. Now, 1/50th scale is what we call minifig scale. The Lego minifig is the representation of the average human being in 1/50th scale. So when I put these little guys into my models or displays, they're in direct proportion to their surroundings. Now, even at 1/50th, and hopefully you got to see Music Hall and Memorial Hall in Lego, which I brought tonight, they're still pretty big. And whenever I do an event or a lecture or a show, I always get the question, how in the world did you get into doing displays that are this huge? Like, well, how did I get here? It all started when I was in second grade. I was at Children's Hospital getting my tonsils taken out, and my mom had come by, and she gave me this little box. It had Lego on it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I had seen them in the stores, but I didn't have any. It's set number 653, just a tiny ambulance and a little helicopter that you could hold in the palm of your hand. And I put it together, and I thought, wow, this is kind of cool. I can just play with it as is, or I can take it apart and get more and build my own stuff. This is going to be a lot of fun. So I started collecting like a lot of kids do. Lots of city series, lots of space. Space was big at the time. And I started working on my own designs. I would do a little airport or a building and have my own little airplanes. But I mean, let's be honest. What can you do with red, blue, yellow, black, and white? Not a whole lot. You really got to use your imagination at that time. And all we had were very crude, rudimentary bricks, just like little 2x4s and 2x2s. So being an only child, I preferred to play alone. I wasn't a loner by any stretch, but kind of being on my own, playing with my Lego on the floor in the living room, which is the perfect hobby, the perfect activity for me. Then I turned 16. Got my driver's license, got a job, started to date, and the extrovert kind of started to come out. And I thought, you know what? I'm just entirely too cool for this. So I stuck all of my instruction sheets, all of my brick in a box, sealed it, and forgot it for decades. About 11 years ago, I got 2 sets for Christmas. My mom had bought me the Millennium Falcon. There's Mom being the enabler again. Get them addicted early. And a Death Star. But this time, when I got those 2 put together after I had received them, I'm like, oh, I forgot how fun this was. But this was different. The color palette had completely expanded. There were these browns and tans and pastels and dark greens. The elements that they had now were roof slopes and arches and tile and leaf elements. It had completely changed from when I was a kid. And that's what reignited my love for Lego. All right, so now you got a middle-aged guy. You know where this is going. Middle-aged guy with a rediscovering a childhood love and expendable income. What could possibly go wrong? So I started collecting again. I was big into Star Wars, and they had these really nice little series called the modulars. And it shows you how you could use all of these new elements and create actual buildings that, they looked real. They looked real. I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. So after a few months of getting some sets and putting them all together and figuring out the building techniques and how you could use these new elements and different combinations to make some really cool stuff. So I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to try my hand at something original, something that doesn't exist. So I had chosen the Battle of Endor from Return of the Jedi. So I had made an 8-foot by 4-foot platform and an Ewok village and a landing pad and the bunker. I had 7 giant sequoia trees that I put together, and one of them was 6 feet tall and almost touched the ceiling in my basement. Strewn all over the display were these little vignettes of scenes from the movie, and it told the story of Return of the Jedi. I had Wicket stealing the speeder bike. I had them handing Luke over to Vader. I had C-3PO 3 feet up, levitating off of the pad, and I also had the final scene of the film, Vader's funeral pyre. Well, while I was working on this, I discovered that there's a whole Lego community. So I had no idea these people even existed. I'm just hanging out in my basement. Well, I met these individuals, and they create Lego clubs. They're called LUGs, Lego Users Groups. They're all over the world. So I joined them. I joined a Lego club, and I couldn't believe that I had actually found my people. They were just as weird as I was. Well, maybe not, but they're pretty darn close. So we started doing shows. They asked me to take Endor out on a tour. I'm like, yeah, sure. Well, we did 5 shows with it, right up to the point where that 6-foot tall sequoia tree was dropped. And literally 1,000 elements, 1,000 brick all over the floor. I'm like, well, that's enough of that. For my next project, I wanted to do something that people could actually relate to. something in the real world that people would look like, oh, that's amazing. So I chose a music hall. I love Cincinnati's architecture. I've been here pretty much my whole life, and that's one of my favorite buildings. I knew it was going to be huge, and I knew it was going to be difficult. So for me, that was my Mount Everest. I contacted Music Hall and told them what I wanted to do, and I'll never forget this. They put me in touch with Scott Santangelo, who was the director of operations at the time, and when I told him what I wanted to do, his response was, "You want to do what?" "I want to build a replica of Music Hall in 1/50th scale using Lego." Oh yeah, this is going to be great. So he asked me if I would be able to have it ready for Luminosity the following August, and I emphatically said, oh yeah, we can do that. So they were all completely on board. They put me in touch with GBBN Architects, and they provided me a full set of working blueprints for the facility, and I got it down to the last window and dimension in exactly 1/50th scale, and did my best to replicate that Victorian era detail. So over the next 7.5 months, 900 hours, I painstakingly built this model that you see out in the lobby. Then, and in the middle of putting the model together, I get a call from the Cincinnati Enquirer. Word had started to circulate around town about what I was working on. And he said, hey, this is Janelle Gelfand. Can I come over and do an interview and bring a photographer and get some pictures? We'd love to do a story about it. Sure, come on over, man. So I came over, we did the interview, did a whole bunch of photos, and then in about 1.5 months, 2 months later, there it was. The Cincinnati Enquirer Entertainment section, right there on the front cover in full color. Oh, I opened it up, and right there, smack dab in the middle of it, right in the middle, was the story and full color photos. So yes, I was a centerfold. Then the big day came. It was August 4th of 2013. And I mean, this is a day that literally changed my life. I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't expect a whole lot. You know, the party was outside. You know, all the excitement's across the street on the lawn. We set up in the lobby, next door Music Hall. And, you know, it's just family and friends. Nobody's going to come over here. Then a couple people walk in. Then a couple more, and more people came in until I finally realized that I was telling stories of history about Music Hall to a crowd that was 8 people deep. What I had done, in addition to the model, I did a deep dive on its history, the building, why it was there, even the dirt that it sat on. Because in the 1850s, that was an actual potter's grave. It was an unmarked grave for the cholera epidemic in 1850. Now let me tell you, if you can make a cholera epidemic interesting to your visitors, you are really onto something. So I had little talking points as I guided. I would start in the front corner, like, why is there a ghost here? What's this angel of music at the top? Why isn't it there now? Where's this skeleton? What are all of these flowers that are on the side of the building? I had 8 little stations that I would take around people, and I did that for 4 hours. I talked to hundreds and hundreds of people. So it's about time for me to go to my seat. And I make my way out, and I start going through the crowd, and I would make eye contact. The one thing that I'm really good at is faces. And I would see somebody, I'm like, oh, hi. And they would wave, think, hey, how you doing? Yo, hey, dude, what's going on? And then I walked by one guy and his friend, and he said, God, man, that's a Lego dude. Huh? Lego dude, what are you talking about? You didn't see the Lego stuff? He built this model, and it's amazing. And he talked to me for 15 minutes and told me, well, there's a ghost, and there's this, and there's this angel, and it's amazing, and something about cholera. that was my point of realization, that my hobby had become something completely different. I was able to impart education on history and architecture and using Lego to do it. The model has been on tour. It'll be 9 years next Tuesday. It's out in the lobby, and wherever I take it, it is always a crowd favorite. So for my next major project, and it's actually, part of the logo here, is the Roebling Bridge. The Roebling Bridge, its 150th anniversary was coming up, and I'm like, I really want to try that out. Now, the Roebling Bridge, in scale, is 32 feet long, made out of Lego. Oh my. But the interesting thing, I did the same thing, used the same approach. I went into its history, its architecture, its story, why it was there. But this had the added element of engineering. So it starts going on tour, and I take it to a number of different shows. We did about 3 or 4 shows, and I finally realized, you know what? This thing is really sturdy. So we started to play with it. You poke at it and pull strings and everything. I would have a child come up where, Billy usually isn't allowed to touch stuff. Don't touch that. And I would say, you're going to put your finger right there. And I would walk 30 feet away to the other side. I would pluck a string on the other side, and you could feel it vibrate through the entire structure, just the same way that a real suspension bridge does. I had some engineering students at one of our events, and we blew wind across it one time. And the interesting thing is that if you remember the Seattle-Tacoma Narrows Bridge, Galloping Gertie, the 1940s, collapsed, right? We blew wind across it, and it gave that exact same opposite oscillation. It was the perfect example of that math and physics really don't understand what scale is. Who would have ever thought that a kid alone in his bed in the hospital with a tiny little set would have brought me out into the world in the way that it has? So for me tonight, this is a story about telling stories. Cincinnati History and Brick was founded for that very purpose, to allow us to bring educational value and entertainment value and new content. What I'm working on right now, I'm working on Crew Tower. This is the last one there. Its footprint is 8 feet by 4 feet, and it is going to be 11 and a half feet tall. And I'll tell you, I cannot wait to let you know what stories that building has to tell.
Mark Clark, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mark. Hey, before we bring out our third storyteller tonight, I have some exciting news about season 13. We have all of the dates selected, and tonight subscriptions go on sale, and you're going to be the first to know. I may have told one other person, but you're going to be like the 2nd through 50th to know what the themes are for this coming season. First of all, in October, since this is the beginning of our 13th season, a number notorious for its bad luck, we thought we would explore luck with our first show of the year, True Luck. All right, so there's going to be stories about luck, both good and bad. Our second show in January is, well, we haven't exactly picked a theme for that yet. I'm going to let you all do that in a little bit. Got a method for that, and I'll explain that after our next storyteller. Our third show of the season, just in time for spring cleaning, is True Home. true home. Could be where your hat is, could be where the heart is. Home sweet home. We got lots of home stories out there. And we're going to finish the season with our gift to you in July, True Gift. So that's the lineup for next season, with the exception of one which will be named in just a little bit here. Subscriptions are going to be on sale tonight at the box office for the lowest price. We're giving them to anybody. Each show, if you came here tonight, you paid full price. It was a $20 ticket. So that would be $80 for a season. We're going to make the subscription for you tonight $60. That's like 3 shows, 1 free. But you got to get it at intermission. Those of you at home, there's going to be a link on your screen at intermission that you could follow. It's a simple link, and you could buy a subscription tonight if you want as well. So get your subscriptions tonight during intermission when you're not looking at the Memorial Hall and Music Hall Lego displays. All right, moving on to our third storyteller, and then we're going to have an intermission. I have to tell you, this man makes his living as a hairstylist. But to say hairstylist doesn't do it justice. If, like I have, you have had the privilege of sitting in his chair underneath his scissors and his razors, you would know what it was like to be the stone carved by Michelangelo that produced the David. I sound like I'm being facetious, but I'm very serious. He is terrific. He's also been through several hobbies in his lifetime, one of which he is about to tell you about. Please welcome Douglas Manley.
Not guilty. I knew I'd get them mixed up. So, my story all starts with a pear tree in a small town north of here. It was at the house of my mom's best friend Anita, who she raised Arabian horses, and she happened to be the high school art teacher. And they were best friends from 2nd grade. She was like an aunt. She's the coolest lady I know. So when we would visit, I would always want to get into her stuff. And she's a bronze sculptor, and she'd have the mock-ups and all this stuff, and I'd want to help. And I was kind of a hyper kid, and that never worked out. So so one day she kind of dragged me out of the house and over by the fence, and where there was a pear tree, and there was an old water trough turned upside down, and she's, looking back, she's like searching anything to keep him busy. She said, I want to paint some pears, but I need to have the good pears. So I need you to find me some good pears, and I need you to set them on the trough here and make sure that they look really good for the painting. I was like, really? I get to, you think I can do that? She's like, oh yeah, take your time. Take your time. So I'm out there, and I'm picking every pear up off the ground. It's like, that one's bruised. Can't use that one. And so I'd feed that to a horse, and then I'd look for another one, and I got all set up. She'd come out, and she'd say, you're getting there. But then she came out, and I had them all up, and she told me, she said, look at that. That's perfect. She said, look how the sunlight goes through there. And look how green it looks, and so pretty. And I was like, oh my God, she thinks I did great. And so, that was the first kind of little positive experience in anything creative that I had ever done. Luckily, when I got to high school, she was still the art teacher, so I was very, very encouraged. Up to that point, I didn't do much creatively because at home, my dad was alcoholic, and it was kind of a stormy existence. I took dance class, which made my hillbilly dad so proud. And yeah, hey. And then so then when I got to high school, I started taking art class, and then I'm not much into sports, so because I took dance, I tried out and made the cheerleading squad. Thank you very much. Which was fun. Not so much in the hometown. We have the pork festival in my hometown, so it's kind of like that was a little iffy in the, you know. But I love my hometown. I love everything about it. It's all good. But I just started in. I didn't really, art class was great. I mean, it was something that I could do with my attention problems and everything. It was something that, you know, just kind of fit. I wasn't a great student, but she was a great teacher and encouraged me a lot. And I just kind of started with whatever. We made jewelry, and I did a batik that was in the Governor's Art Exhibit and one, and just stuff like that. It was the only thing that I really ever had that was, that I followed through with and finished and was kind of proud of it. You know, so when you're finished with high school, it's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And my best friend, she went off to Ohio State, and college wasn't, I mean, the grades weren't really there. But I was art school. You know, I want to be an artist. And there was only one way that I could go. My mom, single mom, didn't make a lot of money. So let's ask Dad. We'll forgive all the missed child support, all the money you borrowed. Don't even worry about it. Just pay for his school, it'll be forgiven. It's good. So, well, great, agreed, done. Got all my supplies. I'm going to, I was like, I'm going to be it. So, called him earlier that week. Everything's good, right? Everything's good. Of course, it's good. I told you, it's taken care of. So, in my first class, and they're going down the roster, and anybody's name we didn't call, and I was like, She said, it happens all the time. It's a timing thing. If the money, you know, go to the admissions office, and they'll take care of it. So I went. Doug Manley, I'm sorry, we have no record of any payment, or we have the registration, but no payment. I was like, oh, okay. I set down all of my supplies, turned around and walked out, and did not draw anything, a stick figure, until 5 years ago. That was 1980. It was my thing. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It was funny today at work. I work with my ex-partner, and I work together. We're very, very get along great. And he said, "Isn't it funny that we were together 14 years, and I didn't even know you could draw a stick figure?" And it's kind of funny, because when I shut it off, I shut it off. If you ask me to go to a museum, I would say absolutely not. They're boring, come up with some excuse. I totally shut it out. It was just the last straw, and I was done. So my mom was the coolest lady, but she gave me this sufficient boohoo time, and then she's like, "You eat a lot, and we need to get this moving on here. So what are we going to do here?" So I was like, I don't know. She had a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise, and I got fired before noon my first day by my mother. That's nice. So then I went and worked at Perkins, and I got fired for doing the bunny hop through the dining room on Mother's Day, which the customers loved, but the management had an issue with it. So, that was kind of the groove I was in. So a friend of mine, her car broke down, and she needed a ride to the orientation for her beauty school. So I took her, and I'm sitting out in the lobby, and the director of the school says, "You can sit in here, it's not a big deal." And so I'm sitting there, and I hear, "If you come every day, you can be finished in 9 months." And I thought, I can do anything for 9 months. I mean, it's anything. Now, mind you, barely combed my own hair. I had never touched anyone else's hair. It was just, I mean, I'm from Eaton, Ohio. You know what I mean? It's like, what do you do? I mean, but pigs, but no, you know, not a lot of fashion icons there. But I mean, everybody looks great, but it's like not where you really get pushed in that direction. And so sign me up. Sign me up. It was reasonable tuition, and we did it. And I did it in 2 years, because the Perkins thing and all that, you know, it's kind of carried through to that, but did finish. It turned out to be a great career. I never planned on doing it for 40 years. I thought it was just going to get them off my back and figure out something else later, but it just so happened that you build these wonderful relationships with people who become your family, and it has sustained me creatively, socially, spiritually, everything. I mean, it's given me a reason to kind of hang on till that one thing, you know, would show up again. So in that, you know, you have these people who come in once a month for hair color, or, you know, every now and then for a perm, whatever. Oh God, not a perm, but no, perms are not in. But I had this client, her name was Susan, and she was the most positive. She just tons of energy, and she's like, I'm taking this drawing class at the Essex Studio. It's the Art Academy's branch, and it's this and that. And I said, oh my God, I love to draw. And it struck me. I had not uttered those words until like September of 1980. And it was, she was like, what? I said, yeah, I like it. She said, you're taking the class with me. I said, absolutely not. And so she signed me up and paid for it. And so I went online to see what the supplies were and all that, and I got the supplies and go to the class, and because I have attention problems, so I've got all these charcoal and, you know, everything that I need to start the class. Well, she's going, now this one is softer than this one, and I'm like, oh my God, okay. So I start doodling, you know, and the teacher came over and she said, did you draw that? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I know I wasn't paying attention and all that. And she said, this is a beginner class. I said, yeah, I know, she signed me up for it. And she was like, okay. And Susan was like, what are you talking about? And she looked at this, she said, you son of a bitch. I was like, what? And she's like, really? I was like, what? But the funny thing was, the second it hit the paper, it was like it never stopped. It was absolutely life-changing for me, because I had so much attached to it that I thought that I had to just like toss away and give up and never, ever, ever have it again. And not one bit of it was gone. Every last part of it came back with a quickness, and it was beautiful. So I bought paints on the way home. And if I've missed 10 days in 5 years of not painting, that's probably pretty close. I paint every day. It's funny because I'm kind of judgmental and like, you know, I'm not so sure about that, or, oh, a perm, no. It's so nice to have something that I am so not attached to the end result. I love the process of painting. Sometimes I get to find, like, in a portrait, it's like, well, the face is kind of ugly, but that one eyebrow's on, I'm telling you. She's looking in 7 directions, but by golly. You know, it's just because I like to paint, and I don't need a painting. I mean, some of them are pretty good, but it's been nice doing this this process. It's funny because I knew I'd let go of a lot of stuff, but I didn't know that this kind of proves it, because I'm done with all that stuff. When it came back, it got rid of resentments towards I mean, I've worked on that too. I've had a couple therapists fire me too, so but common thread through, I was like, go girl, yes, I know that feeling. But it's just nice to have, you never know what's going to show up and what you need. But I had some of my own struggles with alcohol and all that, and because I've always kind of wondered since I started back painting, oh my gosh, what would you be if you had kept painting? And a friend of mine in a program said, what if that would have been a casualty of your drinking and drug use? What if it would have taken it away for good? And it was like perfect timing, you know? And it was great. So I painted a pear. And I sent it to Anita, my high school art teacher, my mom's best friend. My mom has passed away, but I've sent Anita a photo of if it's a little sketch, I send it to her, and she always tells me that my mom would love it. And she's so proud of me, and she's all that. She didn't remember the pear story. So yeah, there's probably so many more that just burned into her memory, but she was quite the inspiration. But you know, it's nice to have a story and appreciate everyone's, and I've certainly enjoyed the process of getting mine ready for you, so thank you.
One more time for Douglas Manley. Folks, I usually try to make this really brief because I know intermission is looming, but I got two things I got to share with you. One is the person who would have been fourth in our lineup tonight, our first speaker after intermission, has come sick with COVID. None of us in the cast have been exposed, but obviously she's not feeling very well, and we wish her the very best. But what this has done is opened up a little room in the second act, maybe for one of you. Listen, we haven't done this since we got to Memorial Hall, but we used to do this all the time. If you're out there thinking, you know, I wish I'd signed up for this. I got a hobby, but you can. What you need to do is find Ramona, and first she's going to be down by the box office where many of you will be running to buy subscriptions in intermission, and she'll have a box or a hat or something, and she'll be saying things like, you want to put your name in a hat, tell a story in Act 2? You want to put your name in a hat? You know, and then after she's gotten all of you from down there, she's going to come up around the models where invariably you'll be gathering, and she'll be doing the same thing, hat, you know, you want to tell a story, and right after intermission, we'll pull one name out and get up to like a 5-minute story. You know, and this isn't like, obviously you've been seeing, this isn't like English class, what's your hobby and how do you do it? This is, you know, like your most proud moment with your hobby, or maybe your most embarrassing moment, or why it's so special to you, what's the connection, that kind of stuff. So 5 minutes, that's all you need to, not even, up to. So just look for Ramona, hey, and when you find her, tell her happy birthday, because it's her birthday today too. All right. Yeah, so that's one. That's one thing I have to tell you. Two is, we're not going to do the singing and everything. I don't like that. All right, second thing is, because I want to get you out in intermission, you're going to vote on that missing theme from Act 2. Here's all this information on the screen. I think. Yeah, there's a QR code if you got a smartphone that does that. It'll take you to the website where there's 5 choices that you could vote on. There's also a bit.ly link, and if you have the Mentimeter app, you know, there's a code there and all that. But use the QR code. It's the fastest way. You people at home could do it too. And there'll be like 5 choices to pick from. Some of you have already seen them. The first one is you can put friends, because, you know, we all got them, right? And the second one is green, because we did blue once, and that was really fun. And the third one, magic. We've talked a lot about it over the years and thought it was about time. Sleep, because I have a weird relationship with it. And finally, what's the 5th one? Teeth. Teeth? Yeah, we did hair once, and it was really cool. So teeth. And you're going to vote through that link or that app or that QR code, and we'll have the results after intermission, and you're actually going to choose, and you can pick as many as you want. You know, so the most popular one is going to win. Anyway, so do that. Buy your subscription, make a donation at 44321 True 12, or go see the models at intermission. We'll be back in about 15. Thank you very much, everybody. One more time for Preston Bell Charles III. Folks, it would be a crime to have Preston play and not tell you a little bit about him. This is not his first time playing for one of the True Theater shows. We're always so appreciative. For one thing, he teaches at Talent Music Studios, so if you know somebody looking for lessons, that's what he could produce. He's the music director of the Cincinnati Hip Hop Orchestra, which he founded during COVID, so check that out. He has played all over the world. He works for his father at Preston Charles Funeral Home. He's a proud father of 2 daughters and a son. He's also a dedicated advocate for those affected disproportionately by the war on drugs, bringing awareness to the lack of attention given to mental health issues as part of his efforts. He puts a lot of work into that. You can see some of the results of that in a documentary, which is, I'm certain, is linked on his website at makeithappenmusic.com. Makeithappenmusic.com. You do yourself a favor by following this gentleman on his website and on Facebook. He's always playing live out and about and streaming it. And follow Preston. Thank you, Preston. Before we draw a name out of the hat or my niece's purse, thank you, Colleen. I got the results right here of the online voting. 28 people participated. Thank you very much. Casting 68 votes. And in last place, green. Nobody seemed to. It got 6 votes, but teeth I thought would do better. Did not. Sleep right down there with it. Magic did pretty well, but friends won the day. So True Friend is what we're going to have in January of next year. Thank you all for participating. That was the first time we ever tried the online voting system like that, so that was pretty cool. All right, so here's how the wild card thing is going to work. In a moment, I'm going to reach into this purse and grab just one of the random names. I heard there was like 10 people who put their names in. Oh, my God. And then you can come up. Now, here's the deal. You could come up by these stairs. We didn't buy extra insurance for that, so... But you're welcome to. It's convenient. Anyway, so there's that. But you could also go around out that or out this way, back up stage. It's pretty intuitive once you go out there. Either way, I'm going to call the name. You come up, and you have up to 5 minutes. Now, I'm going to stand like right over here and time you. I'm not going to be close. I'm just going to be over here. And at 4 minutes, I'm going to ask Preston to do this. So you know it's been 4 minutes. And then at 5 minutes, he might start playing underneath you while you're talking, and that'll be like your cue to kind of finish it up. And then if you just show no signs of finishing, we're going to have him play over top of you, and then, I was going to leave. And, but I think we may even try to get two of you up here. So let's see how this works out. We haven't done this in a long, long time. Thank you again, Colleen. She took everything out of her purse to make this work for us. I have no idea. Somebody else mixed these and collected them. Here, I've got my thumb on. They're like stuck together. Okay, I've got my finger on one. Jennifer Howell. Jennifer Howell. No, that's not Jennifer Verkamp. It's Jennifer Howell. My niece has put my wife's name in here as a joke, but this is not her. Is she coming around? I think I saw somebody leave through that curtain, so then she's going to be walking around. I could tell you, I could almost introduce Jennifer Howell. She's told a story once at a True Theater stage. What was it? The anniversaries, because with her husband, she's got the same anniversary twice. With her, anyway, so that's just a little insight into what that story was about. Just kind of like, make a little chit-chat while I'm up here. So you in the front row, what hobbies do you have? I can't see. Oh, it's my wife. How you doing, Jen? She works a lot. Would you say you have a hobby? Do you? No hobbies at all. Yeah. No, we do stuff. We travel. That's a hobby, right? Could be travel. We travel a lot. That's cool. Is Jennifer coming around? Howell? Jennifer Howell? She's coming around out the back. She's obviously not running, is what's happening. But she's coming, I know, and she'll be here any second. Right, we're going to peer out of that curtain. Oh, there she is, Jennifer Howell, ladies and gentlemen. I got to get my thing out, but here the microphone is. Let me see if I can make sure that adjust it.
I like that the purse matches your shirt,
Oh,
though.
thanks. Yeah, that was not.
It was an excellent choice.
Yeah, I am not the fashionista. Jennifer Howell.
Well, hopefully you didn't spoil too much of my story. I was not going to come up the scary steps because anybody who knows me knows I would fall and break something. So I had to hurry up and run around. So it's a good thing I can run. So when I was thinking about this, I am married to, I think you already told him, somebody who got into storytelling because he wanted to investigate that a little bit further. So I came to all of the performances that he did and got introduced to True Theater that way, and we got to the True Anniversary story, and he said, I'd like to tell a story. Well, lucky for me, he had just told a story in the prior show, so Dave says, well, if Jen wants to tell the story, no pressure, she could probably, I could entertain that. So I decided, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. So I started prepping and ended up telling my story at True Anniversary. And it was a blast. I enjoyed it. And then COVID, right? So then COVID hits, and True Theater goes to online, and Dave starts doing the whole story team. So I hope I'm not giving away too much information, but as they're preparing for the show, there's a story team that Dave reaches out to on Facebook and says, hey, if you have some time tonight, can you listen to the story and provide some feedback? So never intended to get into storytelling, but by chance I ended up getting to tell a story, getting interested in it, and then COVID hit and the whole story team theme came to be. So I have ended up making True Theater and storytelling kind of my hobby. And I told my husband, I was like, hey, I'm gonna tell a story about True Theater being my hobby. I'll never get chosen, and here I am. That's it.
Sure, I'll do that. Thank you very much. All right, she actually saved a lot of time on the clock. I kept that short. So let's do two, and who knows, maybe we'll get three in here. All right, I'm not looking. Oh, wait. Holly Horlander. Is Holly here? There she is. She's going to try the steps. No, she's not going to try. I don't blame her. I wouldn't do it either. She's coming around. I just met Holly for the first time tonight. I know none of her stories, so I can't spoil the story that she's about to tell in any way. Holly Horlander.
Thank you. Hi.
So I have a yarn problem. So back in 2009, I was going through a really hard time in my life. I had a husband who was very abusive, alcoholic. We've heard this story, same type of thing. And I had gained a tremendous amount of weight. And of course I have a weight problem too, but now my yarn problem is bigger than my weight problem. So when you lose weight or when you struggle with weight, it's very hard to keep going. Like you have to constantly be thinking about it, and you have to constantly be motivated to get to where you want to be, your goal, right? You want to get to that goal. So I needed to come up with something that took my mind off of eating. And when you're a stress eater and you're being abused and berated and just yelled at and told how horrible you are and how ugly you are and how you're a fat cow and everything, you have to come up with something. So I was at Walmart with my son one day, and we were just going down the aisles of the craft section, and I walked through the yarn section, and I'm like, I wonder if I can crochet. So I bought a $5 book and like a $7 set of the hooks that they had, and I sat down with that book and I started making like dishcloths. And I made dishcloths, made more dishcloths. I'm like, this is really cool. And I started making other things. And then I was like on YouTube, and I'm like, look at all these instructional videos. You could learn anything on YouTube, right? So I ended up coming across a community called the Crochet Crowd, and they have this incredible man who teaches people how to crochet named Michael Selick. He's incredible. So I started watching him, and then I started doing crochet-alongs, where he would show you how to do, one week you'd do the crochet, and the next week you'd do some more, and the next thing you know, you have this beautiful afghan, okay? So instead of eating and going to food to get rid of my stress, I did crochet. So I did this 10 years ago. I am now 140 pounds lighter than I was then because of my hobby. On top of that, I always like to try to find the positive in everything. So with crochet, I've learned how to make afghans, I've learned how to make hats and scarves. I just received a donated estate of yarn from someone who passed away. And I am making afghans and all different types of things, shawls, dishcloth sets and stuff, and I am selling these and donating the money back to the community for the homeless that gave me the yarn in the first place. So I'm really excited. So it has changed my life, and I have a yarn problem still. So, thank you.
Holly Horlander. And combined, the two of them have taken less than I thought one would take. So we're going to do one more name, just to do a triad is a good number. 3 is a great number, right? We're going to do one more name for tonight, and then we'll get on with our final storyteller of the evening. Hold on, I think I have Emma Talent. I know who Emma is. Emma's one of the students from Northern Kentucky University who's been filming our show for tonight. I hope the teacher can stand in and take over for her on the monitors. I think she might be a little bit shorter than I, so we'll just make a little adjustment here as she comes around. Northern Kentucky University, by the way, and the students at Norse Media have been filming all our shows this season. We're very grateful to them. Emma Talent.
With 10 names on the list and just one, I thought there was no way I would get picked. I have some notes on my phone just so that I make sure that I don't forget anything. My hobby is leaves. And I know that sounds very interesting, but I like to describe it as it's like birding, like you watch birds, except the trees don't move. Recently, I bought a tree guide online, like it shows you all the different trees. I didn't like it, I sent it back. I didn't know I had tree guide opinions until I was on the second one. I would say this hobby all started with my mom's dad. I call him Papa. He taught me all the trees that they have on their property from a very, very small child, like this tall. I knew all the trees. And then I got into high school, joined the coolest club in school, Envirothon. It's a nature quiz. What high schooler would not love that? Not to brag, I was in forestry and I was pretty damn good at the trees. Almost any tree that was on the quiz, I could name. But then I got into college. I had to learn all these film terms like aperture and whatever, f-stops, I don't even know. COVID hit, no more in-person film. I barely know how to run the audio equipment, sorry Strobel. Trees became my hobby again. I started hiking, and I realized as I walked through the woods, I didn't know the trees anymore. So I bought that tree guide that I was talking about, and I started collecting leaves, started pressing them, and it's been a lot of fun. My dad's dad actually loved blackberries, so whenever I pass by wild blackberries, I remember him. He has since passed away, and I commemorated both my dad's dad and my mom's dad in this wonderful tattoo of pecans and blackberries on my leg. So I just wanted to say thank you to both Grandpa and Papa for giving me this love and appreciation of nature and trees.
That's really wonderful. Thank you, Emma. Emma Talent. That's terrific. Jennifer and Holly and Emma, like right after I say goodnight, we have all the applause at the shows. We're going to have the storytellers come out and for a group photo. I hope the three of you will come up here and join us for that picture right after the show. Thank you all so much for participating tonight, and for the others who dared to put their names in the hat. There's a whole season of shows coming up, and if you're interested in telling a story at any one of them, you can do so by going to our website at truetheater.org. You could write us at stories@truetheater.org. I think we've got a phone number maybe up there, but don't call that. I hate that phone number. Do one of the other two. And at some point, we'll be actively calling, hey, where are the people with stories? But you can pitch a story at any time, and we'll keep your name on the list. And when the time comes and we're ready to put together a show. So what was it? Luck, and now Friends, and Home, and Gift. So think about your stories for that. Pitch them, truetheater.org. Remember, we spell theater the fancy way. Follow us on all the social medias. You'll hear about when we're actively putting together our shows, and of course, when we're about to produce the shows, so you can come see them as well. All right, our final storyteller for the evening. Folks, he is a 29-year-old professional magician and autistic self-advocate from Louisville, Kentucky. He shares his magic shows and Magi Talks at fringe festivals, including our own Cincinnati Fringe Festival twice. Libraries, colleges, and for disability service organizations. Impressive, considering that his parents once thought that he would never walk or talk. Please welcome Cody Clark.
Thank you, David. Hello, Cincinnati. Thank you for those awesome tunes, sir. When people ask me about my interest in trains and ask me how long I've been into trains, I can't give them a straight answer. Why not? I can't remember not liking trains. My earliest memories are of train rides, Thomas the Tank Engine VHSs, still part of that generation, and the yearly Great American Train Show at the Downtown Convention Center, which is where I would go to learn about all the trains, all the layouts, and the gauges from tiny Z to very huge G. And everything in between, even some crossover with the Legos. There was always one train that impressed me and stuck out more than the others, and that was the Southern Pacific Daylight Limited. Many rail fans agree it's the most beautiful train in the whole world. For starters, it is a streamlined steam engine, and that is how the railways competed with airplanes in the earliest days of air travel. They made their steam engines look more like planes and rocket ships in a very Art Deco sort of way. Not an ugly black hunk of metal only a mother could love. And on top of that, this particular engine was painted bright red and bright orange because it was reminiscent of the LA to San Francisco, California coastal route. It served twice daily with speed, customer service, and a who's who list of the golden age of Hollywood as its clientele. Best of all, unlike a lot of the other trains I learned about, this very one, still exists. It is at the Oregon Rail Heritage Center in Portland, and every holiday season, it gets to run for the whole holiday season. Every other railroad has the Polar Express. But that's my bucket list item. And I just had to have one of my very own. I asked for it for my birthday. I told countless mall Santas about it, whom were confused that I didn't just want a PS2. And I even asked for it just because. But every time I saw that biggest box that looked like it could have a Lionel box inside, it was always, and I mean always, socks and underwear. I ascertained that I was an expensive kid. And for two reasons, the trains, but also me growing up autistic and those autism therapies costing as much as a daylight model would cost, but every single week. So my parents had to make tough choices, and they did do their best. There were times Santa did give me some little bit more affordable model trains on my parents' credit cards. But the message was clear. On top of the therapy expense, I had also chosen an expensive hobby. I thought it was so unfair that my family was poor. Why couldn't we be rich like everyone else? I couldn't change my family's circumstances. I wasn't a magician. Not yet. But even in elementary school, I vowed that when I grew up and found a career, if that career would be a lot of fun, would help me pay the bills a bit better than my family was able to, and leave enough left over for me to obtain a model of the Southern Pacific Daylight Limited, I know I'd have made it in life. That vow stayed with me. I remained fond of the daylight, but the trains went up because our family went on a vacation to Gulf Shores, Alabama, where families go when they can't afford Florida. Sensing a theme? There was a magic show there by a magician named Bart Rocket, who could tell I was enjoying this as much as you all are enjoying this. Very meta. So he called me up on stage, which is the next worst thing to having your story be drawn out of a purse. Glad you like that. Especially when you consider that magicians don't have the best reputation for treating onstage participants well. But he was the exception to the rule. He did some gags with me with a handkerchief and a bag, and I got one over on him by changing it to a third color entirely. Then he asked me where I was from, and I told him Louisville, Kentucky, and he asked who I was with, and I said, my Mima and Pawpaw. And even in Alabama, that gave him enough jokes for the whole show. Then, when I didn't think the show could get any better, Bart inadvertently showed me how he'd obtain the Daylight Limited. He had his assistant come over, get into a box, handed me a blade. Yes, a blade. Had me tap, 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 and just like magic, a clumsy autistic kid does the world's most popular and dangerous magic trick without no training whatsoever. Yes, the assistant was safe, as magicians do have our secrets, but the impact was the big thing that spoke to me in the moment and made me feel that for once, instead of being told by therapists what to do, I could tell the world what I wanted it to do. And that made me think, maybe magic is how I go about this whole career and daylight limited goal. I found a club called the Louisville Magic Club. There's magic clubs in almost every city because Hogwarts is sort of real. And there were 100 magicians who swapped secrets about tricks and about business. And it was when I learned about 2 big Las Vegas magicians that were in my magic club that made me feel I found out how I was going to get my daylight limited. I learned that alumni of my magic club were Lance Burton and Matt King, 2 of Las Vegas's finest. A lot of you all are probably thinking, of all the ways I could go about getting a career and getting a daylight limited model, why be a self-employed artist? But you know that Lance and Mac walked the same streets I walked, and in Lance's case was also a Butler Bear and a Louisville Cardinal, except I actually graduated. Well, the only reason he didn't was because he got the Vegas gig, which is why he lets me joke about it. If all those coincidences led to them being professional magicians, I could definitely be too, and it was easy as pie at first because my first gigs of consequence were on the Fringe Theater circuit, of which True Theater has had a long association with Cincinnati's. But for those not in the know, essentially a difference between Fringe and other forms of theater is Fringe does not prejudge whether or not a show sucks. So newbies and acts who have diverse voices and have a hard time getting on other stages have a place at Fringe, which is great for my show in which I combine magic, comedy, and storytelling to share what living with autism is like for me. I did it in 2015, and not only was it a critical success, not only are people in this audience that saw me then in this audience now, and I still keep in touch with all the time, but my marketing strategy of targeting local disability orgs led to those same orgs being year-round clients. I thought I cracked the formula. I saw my money pile go from 0 to this, to this, to this, and it was going to be no time at all until I got that daylight limited. Then COVID stopped that train at its station. All live shows of any sort were forcibly paused, not to mention those directly affected by the virus. Us artists did get unemployment for a little bit, but our bigger concern was whether we could have careers in the arts again, and whether I'd have to do a more formal route to getting that model of the daylight limited. On my Facebook feed, in the midst of everyone's fears and confusions, was a post from the host of my favorite podcast on magic, Jonah Babbins of Discourse in Magic. The post was an open call to have a Zoom chat with him about your career and about how to survive the pandemic as a magician. Of course, I figured it was going to be a sales pitch, but I enjoyed his podcast. I enjoyed hanging out with him at magic conventions, so I thought, why not? The thing he sold me on I'm still a member of to this very day. It's called the Magicians Accountability Group in Quarantine. Majik for short. And in that first meeting, he genuinely showed that he cared about how I was doing. He asked about where my career was, reminded me that I am a successful magician, just temporarily inconvenienced. And he told me how through presentations on Zoom, he maintained most of his client base. At the end of that meeting, he told me to ask myself 3 questions about my business. Who in my client base is still open? Who in my client base still has money? And whom of those have a need that the pandemic created? That took me back to the disability orgs, who confirmed that skill retention, especially among their service population that was not that much younger than me, that was a big concern because they weren't in school taking their regular set of classes during a very important time in their young adult lives. And they already knew me from the sensory-friendly magic shows I did for those groups. So they were like, can you combine those magic tricks with these talking points we're going to hand to you and make virtual, interactive, not boring Zoom presentations out of them? The result, a roster of 4 talks, 4 magic talks in the newly emerging field of adult transition planning, presentable on Zoom. In short, I was back in business. I got my old clients back, and Jonah taught me how to use data scraping to find new people just like my old clients. And then when I combined those 2 things, to my surprise, I, in spite of a pandemic, met my 2020 income goal. Can y'all take a wild guess at how I rewarded myself? Yes! My own model of the Southern Pacific Daylight Limited. The train I always wanted and the train I never thought I would get, so I spared no expense by getting the MTH Imperial Rail King model of the Southern Pacific 4449 GS4 48484 Daylight Limited steam locomotive. It had all the literal bells and whistles, actually smoking, realistic speed steps, semi-scale, and I got 8 passenger cars, and you can see almost all of them, so it would look just like it did in the poster. And having that literal trophy in my train/magic room was such a great motivator to continue. I have a 4x8 O-gauge train layout on which I run 12 different engines with many different cars ranging from War Thomas to Looney Tunes to Disney, all the different hobbies within one hobby. I am now very close to my ultimate income goal, and back in February, I started my first successful romantic relationship. Life is still not perfect, but when you have hobbies and are open to how they can interact with each other, life gets a lot more magical. Thank you all. My name is Cody Clark. Thank you.
One more time for Cody. Starting next season, Cody's going to be taking over the job as MC for this show. Folks, that's our show for tonight. One more time for all our storytellers. Cody, Nune, Mark, Douglas, our volunteers, Emma, Holly, Jennifer, Preston, Charles III, our friends at Memorial Hall, Annette and David backstage, all of you. Hey folks, we always say that it takes two to tell a story, one to tell it and one to open their hearts and take it in. And tonight, you opened your hearts to all our storytellers, and for that, we appreciate you. It took you, it took all these people on the screen, every one of you to make this show happen. We thank you so much. It's not too late to make a donation. It's never too late to make a donation. Texting TRUE12 to 44321. You could use the link you're going to see at the end to buy a subscription online if your box office is closed. The models are still set up, so hang out, take off. Storytellers, come up and get a picture. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. And if I see you outside after the show, or whether next I see you is October 27th for True Luck, until next I see you, be true.